So my history with CAJAC goes back to 2010. I've been working in the Jewish communal field as a professional over the last 25 years. And it happened to be that I saw a very interesting job posted that was the executive director position of CAJAC. And the position spoke to me, having been a part of a Chevra Kadisha in years prior to that. So I always maintained a real passion for Jewish end-of-life issues, kavod hamet, respect of the dead. So when I interviewed for CAJAC, the position was pretty clear. We quickly cultivated a relationship with the New York State Division of Cemeteries, with the Attorney General's office, with the New York City Council. So it was sort of a broad mandate. And it was really the nascent period of CAJAC. We were really establishing our footprint. Jewish tradition and burial really dates back to the fourth portion of the Torah, Chayei Sarah, which describes Abraham's efforts to ensure that he had a burial place for Sarah. And in turn, he also procured burial place, Marat HaMachpelah, for his son Yitzchak, for his grandson Yaakov, and their wives. And so this concept has really stuck with the Jewish people from time immemorial. And so when we look at cemeteries, and why is it important that we focus on Jewish cemeteries? Why is it important that we have partners who are willing to support CAJAC's work? Because we look at the cemeteries that exist here in the United States, particularly in New York. These were set up by our ancestors that came over from Eastern Europe. These were set up by people who fought to establish Jewish life here in America. We owe it to them. We owe it to our forebears. We owe it to our family members who accomplished so very much. But there is definitely a lack of knowledge and awareness, especially at that time, in the broader Jewish community. Again, most people take the cemeteries for granted, not because they don't care, but because they don't know. And so typically what I saw at some cemeteries was complete lack of maintenance, down stones, fencing that was inadequate to prevent intrusion. But I also learned a little bit about the financial side of Jewish cemeteries, learned about endowments, learned about perpetual care, learned about what it would take in terms of governance of cemeteries. So among some of the really important partnerships we've had over the years, I want to give a significant credit to the New York Board of Rabbis. Rabbi Joe Potasnik has been a board member of CAJAC's from the very beginning. We are very fortunate to have been funded by UJA Federation of New York really for the last 15 years. And so by virtue of being affiliated with UJA, it's also given us a gravitas with the broader community. People are seeing that CAJAC is a significant and relevant organization.
With CAJAC, right away they provided advice, time-tested advice, things that really worked. They helped me find vendors who were very cost-effective, which is so important when you're working off of an investment pool, don't have a large revenue stream. They found very reliable vendors who could rectify monuments that had fallen, could take care of landscaping in a proper way, be proactive in a very efficient way, and provide sound guidance on what was good, prudent investment strategy to make sure that the limited resources would be preserved and would be there for the long haul.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, CAJAC has established working relationships with several major cemeteries in the New York metropolitan area. We include Beth Moses and Wellwood cemeteries on eastern Long Island, Beth Israel Cemetery in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And the nature of the relationship is that these large cemeteries are populated by hundreds, if not thousands, of individual organizations and societies. And as CAJAC has taken over these societies, these organizations, we have become partners with the cemetery. We are assisting them in making their operations efficient, and reciprocally, they are helping us to fulfill our mission. So many of CAJAC's supporters, including our board leadership, as well as funders and other interested parties, really came to us because of some negative experience they had at a Jewish cemetery.
It was a complete accident how I got involved with CAJAC. My uncle, Stephen Bieber, whose birthday happens to be today, asked me to help him. He wanted to visit his great-grandparents where actually it was just his grandparents in Bayside, Queens, in the cemetery there. And I picked him up at Newark Airport. We went to get some stones at Home Depot, and we drove out to Bayside Cemetery, and the place was in utter disrepair. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, with the overgrown weeds, the toppled headstones, the garbage. It was literally unbelievable, the condition that the final resting place of 35,000 Jews was in the richest community and the biggest Jewish community in the world.
So when it comes to the governance of Jewish cemeteries, many cemeteries were operated by Eastern European societies. And so their efforts when they came to this country not only involved setting up synagogues and schools, but also making sure that they had a place for the dead to be buried. But as we've seen attrition in different parts of New York and New Jersey, shifting demographics, changing locations of Jewish communities, shifting locations of Jewish communities, many of these synagogues either folded or merged into larger synagogues, and unfortunately, oftentimes the cemeteries were left behind. And one of the major changes and shifts within CAJAC over the last 5 to 6 years, we began as an organization that sought to remediate the damage and the decline of Jewish cemeteries. We raised money, we brought volunteers, but what we ultimately came to conclude was that unless we were able to establish skin in the game, and by that I mean having a role in operating the cemetery, managing the cemetery, overseeing the cemetery, unfortunately we ran the risk of squandering very precious charitable resources along with volunteer efforts. And so today I'm proud to say that we are now managing over 10,000 graves throughout New York and New Jersey. The organization is only getting larger. And not only are we working with the groups that we have under the CAJAC umbrella, but we're seeing an avalanche of other Jewish organizations who are turning to us to help execute succession planning for their cemeteries. I've always sort of seen CAJAC as the greatest expression of who I am professionally and personally. And many times people are sort of floored when I tell them, they ask me, well, what do you do? And I say, I run a consortium, a not-for-profit consortium of Jewish cemeteries. And then you have to unpack that a little bit for people. But once people understand that essentially the specialty of CAJAC is promoting Kavod HaMet and making sure that cemeteries are not forgotten, they're not abandoned, and that there is a centralized community mechanism to absorb these cemeteries and to maintain them into perpetuity. And sure, we're still actively involved in remediation projects, including a desecration of several Jewish cemeteries in Rotterdam, New York, but we also make improvements, capital improvements at our own cemeteries. But being in the driver's seat, which was the position that we weren't in the early stages of CAJAC, has really been a major game changer for us. These are now our cemeteries, and we now have the ability to implement best practices. I'd like to give a special thank you to CAJAC's Board of Directors for selecting me for this distinguished honor. I also want to acknowledge my family, my wife Jessica, my children Ari and Kobe and Rafi and Aiden and Liam, and my parents who have always encouraged me. CAJAC is in a wonderful position now. We are growing leaps and bounds, and as I look back from year to year and I see our accomplishments over a 12-month period, I take tremendous pride. And I'm excited for what the future will bring for us, the overwhelming needs of the community. We have responded and we will continue to respond. And I look forward to being a part of leading this renaissance of CAJAC and seeing that Jewish cemeteries will always have a place to turn to ensure that they are preserved and that we always perpetuate Kavod HaMet.